Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History, Spiritual Quest. We're into Chapter 10 of the Book of John and the Impersonal Life. Hi, Gun, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And we're going to get started with a song, and this song is I Was There.
Midnight lights, rhinestone fire, Arabian suit burning with desire. He hit the stage like thunder rolls, Vegas shook and the story unfolds. Charlie's birthday crowd went wild. He cracked a joke and sang with style. But just before he sang Hurt So Weak, he stopped the show and made us weep. He gave away his heart, not just a song. Diamonds and gold where the love belonged. Rings and shades from the man backstage. He healed the broken, he lit the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I saw it all that night. Back in hand, the man stepped near. Elvis smiled, the crowd could hear. Thanks to you, we raised the light. 17,000 hearts took flight. Then back behind the velvet door, he gave away a little more. A music ring, a boxcar shine, a suit that held a sacred time. He gave away his heart, not just a song. Diamonds and gold where the love belongs. Rings and shades from the man backstage. He healed the broken, he lit the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I saw it all that night. Didn't need applause to know his worth. He gave away his soul in Vegas mirth. Not just a king, but something more. A man who knew what hearts were for. He gave away his heart, not just a song. Pieces of love where the brave belong. Ritual gifts from the man backstage. He saved the hurting, he lit the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I'll never be the same. I was there, I saw the rings, I saw the light. He gave away his heart, and it burned so bright.
Thank you all for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echo. And today we hear the echoes of Elvis Presley through his own handwriting, as we'll look at another page out of The Prophet, which was a book that Elvis loved before he loved The Impersonal Life by Joseph Benner. June Wanico, a girlfriend of Elvis's in the early 50s, well, in his early career in the 1950s. She lived in Biloxi, Mississippi, and she gave him a copy of this book. She believes she is the first one to have given him a copy of the book. We don't know what copy this is because it's been auctioned, but it doesn't have a real provenance that goes with it. Like, it doesn't seem to have been a gift to anyone. I think that means that we're looking at Elvis's raw thought. his working copy, the book he was using to speak to himself. This may have been intended for another, but because of that lack of provenance, or at least they didn't advertise it to us, it sure seems like this is something Elvis was reading and underlining and annotating for himself. His handwriting is a little extra sloppy as well. You can see there's some pen strokes where he's not lifted the pen completely off the page, as if he is writing in haste. He's got to get these thoughts out of his head and onto the paper before they disappear. He wants to make sure he gets this recorded down, because in the next moment, something could distract you, including the text itself, and you'll lose this thought, and he wants to come back to it and reflect on it with the rest of this text later. The underlines probably tell us where the text resonated with Elvis, where he sees something that he recognizes from elsewhere, truth from the Bible, truth from the impersonal life, truth from his lived experience. Perhaps it's something that's happening to him in the moment as he reads the book, and we don't know when he read this book or made these underlines. The parts that he doesn't underline, these could be parts that he's just not finding resonance in the moment. Maybe he doesn't understand them in the moment, so he bypasses them to focus on what he does. Maybe he rejects what he's not underlining. I don't think I've ever seen him cross anything out. That would be an obvious rejection. Especially if he crossed something out and written something else in next to it. But he doesn't seem to do that. So if he is rejecting, it's an open rejection in a manner that I'm going to look at it again as a whole when I come back through the page. But at this time, I'm not seeing the truth, or the truth that it's saying doesn't seem relevant in this time or for what I need. And I think what he needed was to be able to stitch these different thought patterns together, these different paths. So this book, The Prophet, is, I believe it's the life story of the prophet, and he's telling it in a way that allows others to use his life to draw parallels with. Somewhat like we are given the life of Jesus, because Jesus' life reflects everybody's life. And the prophet is saying that my life reflects at least some people's lives, and perhaps they can learn something from my life. And he's written it in what appears to be a manner similar to Joseph Benner, in the sense that it has multiple layers in the way that you could understand what he's written. And therefore, it's a journey for the reader to learn about themselves as they read about this man's life. And so it's a little less harsh, I think, than stepping into the impersonal life, where you're having a conversation directly with God. He's talking to you as the I am, directly out of your heart. And Gunn saying that this book came from Graceland, then yeah, that's my belief, is that this was, it wasn't necessarily Graceland. Elvis had homes in different areas, and he did travel with his library, but I think he also kept copies of certain books that he really liked at these different places, just in case he showed up there and he didn't have these trunks. I can't prove that. But when these places are sold, there's been some auctions from them, and I believe there were books similar, and I don't know if it was the Prophet, but I believe there were spiritual books that get auctioned off that were left behind. And Gunn's noting that Elvis is spelling thy in his notation the same as from the Bible. So this appears to be a citation. That's a good point. We haven't read the citation yet, but we're about to get there. So Elvis wrote, let's go ahead and jump to that citation because that's what everybody's going to read when they open this book and they come to this page. And Elvis has written, you can choose to disregard the pain, heal thyself, and rid thy pain. You can choose to disregard the pain, heal thyself, and rid thy pain. So this is interesting because I believe, again, it's got multiple layers of meaning. And it says you can choose to disregard the pain, which means that you could look past pain that you have. You can move through it. You could still accomplish things despite pain. That seems to be a similar life lesson to everybody who's ever lived, right? We all live with pain at some point or another. And then he says you could heal thyself. And so Elvis is showing belief that your mental state, your spiritual state, can heal whatever this pain is, which would indicate it's a spiritual pain, although he's not limiting it to spiritual pain. And then he says, and you can rid thy pain. So there are three things that you can do. You can disregard, you can heal, or you can rid yourself of the pain. Or this could be a sequence that you must go through. So it could be a choice of three, or you need to first disregard the pain. That clears the fog, which is keeping you from alignment. You're misaligned. The pain comes from misalignment. And you're misaligned because you're paying attention to the pain. And so when you clear the fog of the pain by disregarding it, you can see the light shining through, which is headed north on the compass. So you're headed towards Jesus. You're facing God. It's about orientation. This is what comes from Joseph Benner in the Impersonal Life. It's all about orientation. And then when you're oriented, the alignment itself will heal you because now you're communicating with God. And the love that God sends, the communication, rids you of your pain. And I don't know if it is a quotation, but the thys are certainly tying this back to a King James translation of the Bible, the way that Elvis experienced the Bible. So he's referencing scripture, whether he's quoting it or not. So he is invoking God within the passage without saying God because he writes thy. Now let's start at the top of this page, which again, I've never read this book. And we're pulling a page at random out of the book. This is page 52. And Elvis has underlined some things that are apparently speaking to him. The book says, and a woman spoke, saying, tell us of pain. And Elvis has underlined, tell us of pain. Now we know, because we've looked at it a lot in this series, that Elvis especially in the 1970s, had a lot of physical pain. Now, he had physical pain before this because he was already taking painkillers for injuries that he would experience on set. Now, he also was participating in a very brutal form of karate. He really liked to smack people around and get smacked himself. Like, there was almost no holds barred in the football and the karate that these guys played. They held back from his face. That was like the only rule that they really had. Don't hit the boss's face. But otherwise, with each other and around Elvis and with Elvis, they were pretty rough. So he had injuries from that as well. Broke his finger once playing football. But he's also obviously talking about spiritual pain. He's had massive spiritual pain from the loss of Gladys. We've looked at many other people in his life that he's lost. And we've barely started to scratch the surface on these people that he's lost. We've seen that there's been some kind of break at some point with his Aunt Lillian, who was a direct link to Gladys. She resembled Gladys. And we saw in yesterday's episode about Red West that Elvis had seen somebody on a cover of a book that looked like Gladys in his mind, and so he's drawn to the book. Later, he will say that Ginger Alden resembles Gladys, and that's why he's drawn to her. So he's got a lot of pain and memories of pain. Every time he sees Gladys, it's that pain lived over and the pain for all these other people that he's lost. Plus, he has this spiritual pain about, are these other people that he knows and are in his circle and he thinks are good, are they going to go to heaven with him? And at the same time, these people he's been trying to figure out a way to save like this, they're breaking off from him and they leave him. Sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't. Some of them are writing books. So there's a lot of pain. I don't know when he underlined this, but it wouldn't really make any difference. When he did, we could point to pain that he had at that moment. And he said, this is from the book, your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. And Elvis has underlined this. Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. Now, he did not underline the breaking of. That's very interesting. He says your pain is, he does not underline breaking, the shell that encloses your understanding. Your pain is the shell that encloses your understanding. Elvis is again underlining in a way that points out the interference or the fog with the transmission of the I am. He is identifying the resonance of misalignment. Pain is the misalignment. Now, he doesn't say it's the breaking of the shell. And I think this is significant because if we look at Scientology, which most of us would believe Elvis did not approve of, Scientology, it is all about surgically, in a spiritual sense, although they don't really use the word spirit, I don't think, but in an inner life, your brain, that your secular thought patterns, that you excise certain pieces of it. You cut out certain parts of yourself because they're causing you problems. in the way that you think. That's kind of one of the basic underlying tenets of Scientology. And I don't want to minimize Scientology to one thing, but that's very important to them, that you cut out pieces of yourself to make yourself better, that you alter yourself. Benner was exactly the opposite. Benner's whole point is that everything of you is a gift from God. None of it is dispensable. You cannot fix yourself by cutting away pieces, because that's simply ignoring yourself. That those pieces, even if they're cut away, remain part of you, because it's all unity. Everything is one, and you can't cut yourself away from unity, just as you cannot cut pieces of yourself away. That you will never align in that manner. Now, Scientology doesn't care about orientation, and they don't have a God that you look to externally from yourself. Both Scientology and Benner say to look inside for the answer. But in Scientology, you're talking to yourself, and in Benner, you're talking to the I am in your heart, which is a communication path outward from yourself, which is part of your broadcast of love. You intake love and you broadcast love. And Gunn says that it's sad to read about his pain and trying to understand it. It is sad. But it's also sad that everybody experiences pain. And I think it is enlightening to see how he viewed his pain. He's showing us that he knows that the pain keeps him away from God if he focuses on it. Hi, Deborah. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. Now, he has not underlined the next 4 paragraphs, but let's go ahead and read them. It says, even as the stone of the fruit must break, that its heart may stand in the sun, so must you know pain. Now, that's a poetic way to look at pain. It's saying that a fruit has a seed inside. And the only way for the seed to live and grow and become a new life is for the fruit to break, which is the pain. And so there was a purpose to the pain, and that was to bring forth something even more miraculous. A new form, a new understanding. Hi, Jen. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you. Hi, Karen. Thank you for coming. Appreciate seeing you here too. But Elvis didn't underline that part. And the next piece says, and could you keep your heart in wonder at the daily miracles of your life, your pain would not seem less wondrous than your joy. And this is, I think, advice that if you can see past your pain to the miracles of life, you know, that the sun rises, that the flowers bloom, that you have food to eat, things like that, that will lessen your pain just through the reception of the love that is the unity of these other pieces. But Elvis did not underline that section either. And then it says, and you would accept the seasons of your heart, even as you have always accepted the seasons that pass over your field. This is a reflection on the way that we experience time as human beings. there's a sequence of events and that everything has a season, and this too shall pass, that pain is temporary, even the pain that seems to never end. Elvis did not underline this. That may be an indication that his pain never did end. He couldn't find the season of the pain because it just kept going. And Deborah says that she lives in terrible pain every day and night, so she knows how Elvis felt. I'm sorry to hear that, Deborah. I hope that maybe seeing how Elvis looked at it maybe helps you. Because we know that he definitely experienced pain, especially physical pain, in the 1970s. Further it got into the 70s, the more pain he experienced. And then this book says, and you would watch with serenity through the winters of your grief. So this is comparing pain to winter, that spring will come, new life will be seen, will again bask in the sun, and that we've just got to make it till then. And that makes it bearable to know that somewhere in that future is a way out. Now, Elvis didn't underline this either. And if you look from Elvis's point of view, especially about his spiritual pain, which was probably connected to his material possessions, he had everything he wanted, and yet this was not spiritual fulfillment. He could look into a future where he kept material possessions and still did not reach spiritual fulfillment, or where there were no material possessions, but he'd already been there and he had not found spiritual fulfillment in poverty either. And he'd watched a lot of people suffer in poverty. So maybe it was very difficult to see a future where you could achieve spiritual peace either with or without material objects. As a poor person, it's easy for me to look and say, well, if I just had this or that, that would make all the difference. I think this is also the lesson that Elvis used to teach people when he gave them a car. You're happy in the moment, but the next day, you've got to buy gas to put into this thing. And Jen says that she's got pain as well. And then she has neuropathy. I've got that in my feet and the tips of my fingers as well. So I know exactly what you're talking about there. That's another thing about the celebration of youth. In youth, there's a lot less pain. There's maybe as much or more spiritual pain. You got a lot of wondering in your heart and trying to find, but you have a lot less physical pain in most cases. And so that's part of maturity, I think, is that your body does change as you grow older. And that's also some of what we hear reflected in Elvis's songs and thoughts, like when he's underlining things and writing things here. Deborah says that her niece has that too. And then we get to a part where Elvis has underlined, and it says, much of your pain is self-chosen. And he's underlined that. He says, I'm experiencing pain and I chose to do it. If he's talking to himself, if he's giving someone else advice, he might be saying, I see that you're in pain, but if you move, if you just shift your perspective a little, if you look at it the way I'm looking at it with you, you might see there's not really there. We might be able to relieve you of this pain. But in this case, I think he's talking to himself because of what we've already talked about with the provenance of the book. And then it says, it is the bitter potion by which the physician within you heals your sick self. Now, Elvis has only underlined, you heals your sick self. This reflects back on the self-chosen. You could choose not to have the pain, and then you've healed yourself. Or you have something that you're focusing on that's causing this pain, and you could remove that or change your perspective, and then you've healed yourself. And Gunn says it's heartbreaking to read, your pain is self-chosen. That's interesting. I'd be interested to know why you believe that it's heartbreaking. I think everybody chooses a certain amount of pain that they, and I am hearing resonance that the pain is a fog to alignment. Now, truthfully, I've never thought about alignment or orientation in regards to spiritual thoughts or religion until we started this series and I was reading this Impersonal Life. And yet I keep seeing it reflected in what Elvis is pointing out and what he underlines. And then Gunn's repeating the you heals your sick self. And so I think you're saying that he's depending on himself to heal his pain, and maybe he really needs to talk to others, or he needs to take this problem to someone who could help him with the pain beyond himself. That maybe he's isolating himself in this pain because he's focusing in on that it's self chosen and that maybe he could heal it without anyone else's help. That's possible. And Gunn says that she has pain too, but she's certainly not chosen to have it. I think we've all got pain we've not chosen to have it as well. It sure would be interesting to know what he was actually referring to, right? Or at least know what period he wrote this in. And Gunn says that she cannot take away her pain herself. I can't take away mine either. And I don't think the others who have mentioned it here can as well. So that's true. There's a lot of pain you can't take away yourself, especially physical. And of course, at the very top of the page, the woman said, tell us of pain. It's with the capital P. I don't think it's differentiating between physical and spiritual pain. Nothing on the page differentiates it. And then here they're talking about a physician in the next line, which would certainly indicate physical pain. It says, therefore, trust the physician and drink his remedy in silence and tranquility. Now, if you heal yourself, that makes you the physician, and yours is the remedy. And the silence and tranquility might be telling you to go into meditation and therefore align. And then the Lord will tell you what to do, or he will help you. Or it could be when Dr. Nick gives you a prescription, you should take it. You should trust that it's good. Maybe you should even read up on other prescriptions that are like it and ask Dr. Nick for those too. I could see how someone could pull that out of these words. I don't think Elvis is referring to that, but other people around Elvis make a big point that Elvis trusted Dr. Nick and other doctors to a great degree. I think we could also say others minimize Elvis's use of prescriptions by saying that it was recreational. But I think we could see in his use of prescriptions a trust in pharmaceuticals, in the medical science of the time. I'm not sure as we look back from 2026 that that trust was truly placed. Now, a lot of us, we're still placing that same trust in the industry, but there's no doubt that it has improved significantly since Elvis's day. And when we look back, we see what was going on as crude. But if we went back to the turn of the century before that, well, then it was really, really crude. So some of it's a matter of perspective. Hi, Emma. Thank you for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And Karen says she agrees this would be interesting to know the time frame when Elvis was searching. Or when he wrote this, because he was always searching. And Gunn says if Elvis said it was self-chosen, he must have thought so. Well, he's only underlining, so I don't know if we can say he said it, but I think it reflects at least that thought going through his head. And Deborah says that yes, Elvis trusted the doctors. And Jen says that back in those days, people always trusted everything the doctors told them. Yeah, they didn't have the internet. What choice did they have? There was no WebMD. There wasn't really a second opinion back then. You could go find another doctor, but it was kind of hard just to find a doctor. You know, if you lived in Tupelo, how many doctors were there? Of course, Elvis lived in Memphis and he could have had as many doctors as he wanted, but then once you gather a chorus of doctors and each one is saying something different, well, then what do? I think the royal family went through that a lot in England, again in the late 18th century or 19th century. They'd get all these physicians. Well, it's been throughout time, really. You would gather all these different physicians, each one would say something different, and then one by chance would somehow be right, and that would be the guy that they would stick with for a while. And Karen says that medication has advanced so much. We know so much more today. And Jen says Elvis probably didn't want it out in the media, too. Yeah, I mean, you got to keep these kind of searches private. You can't just seek medical care anywhere. It's got to be someone you can trust. And so maybe the amount of trust that Elvis had with Dr. Nick was increased because of this trust he had with Dr. Nick about not talking to the media. That's probably a really good point. And Gunn's saying, well, he did underline this, so that's what he agreed to, right? I think that's a strong interpretation. But again, was he talking to himself or was he talking to someone else? That he sees that someone else has chosen pain and he's trying to talk to them. I think in this one he's talking to himself, but again, I can't prove that. It's just in how you interpret it and take it in this moment, but it's certainly meaningful to him. And then he's writing below it, you can choose to disregard the pain. That would indicate it might be self-chosen. And he's written that himself. And he says you can heal thyself. And that's reflecting what the passage said. You heals your sick self. That you're the physician. And you could rid thyself of thy pain, and he's putting he could drink his remedy in silence and tranquility. So I think it's a strong reading of the passage to say he does believe some kind of pain that he's experiencing is self-chosen. But again, if we knew this time period, that well, we could speculate further on exactly which pain that was. This is my cheat sheet of equations. Kind of wraps the impersonal life into some verbal equations that we can use to look for resonance in what we read. Let me look for one that has resonance with what we just saw. So, one is misaligned or sin. They're in the right hand column. Misaligned is the third down, and then the next one is sin. And misaligned equals the inability to feel or accept love. It equals solitude. And sin is the internal interference with the ability to feel love. So sin is the fog of the pain. Misalignment is when the fog has caused us to lose our ability to see the compass, and we have shifted away from the north. And the further away we shift, we feel a greater and greater inability to accept love. An easy way to think about this is shame. When you picture shame, it's almost always with your head down. You're not looking at the person that you're shamed from, and you turn away from them. So it's about an orientation, and the sin itself is the fog, perhaps that you're creating yourself with the pain. But it could also be physical pain that you have no control over. All of it creates interference from the mortal self with alignment, orientation, the ability to communicate and to tune your radio to the broadcast of the IM. And so I think this is part of what Elvis was also saying on that page, is that the pain made him feel alone, the solitude. I think a lot of people feel lonely in their pain. And Gunn says it's important to know if it was physical or mental pain he meant, and when it happened, of course. Yeah, it's a mystery. But it is kind of telling that the book page itself, it didn't distinguish. Now let's move back into this comic book version of the Book of John, which is really a gospel and not the Book of John itself, but just giving us another story about Jesus in a chronological fashion that we can fit into our readings of John. And Karen says she agrees. That's the question. Was it physical or mental pain that Elvis was referring to? In this panel, the scribes and Pharisees provoke him to speak of many things, laying wait for him and seeking to catch something out of his mouth that they might accuse him. And I believe this is Jesus at the same dinner that we left him at with the Pharisee. And there's other Pharisees there. There's a bunch of guests, I guess. And I interpreted a panel before as Jesus speaking to a woman, because the person didn't have a beard. But here I see there's a couple of men that don't have beards. And that's kind of unusual in this comic book. I don't think we've seen any men in this comic book that weren't Romans that didn't have beards. So I might have misspoken about that last comic book panel. But here this would have, in later life, not with a child Elvis who might have seen this comic in the 1940s, but with an older Elvis, this part of John, it mirrors what Elvis experiences with the press. They lay in wait for Elvis, and they seek to catch something out of Elvis's mouth, or the mouth of one of the people around him, or out of the mouth of the colonel, or out of the mouth of one of his girlfriends or his parents. Anybody they can get that has anything anywhere in the orbit of Elvis. And they're specifically looking for something scandalous so that they might accuse him. They want to have things to say he did wrong. He shouldn't have done these things. That he's a sinner. And that's what the Pharisees are doing to Jesus. So again, Elvis is not Jesus, but in Jesus's life, we see reflections of everybody's life. And then it says, to the multitudes, Jesus preaches, beware of the hypocrisy of the Pharisees. So Jesus is now on a balcony, probably of that Pharisee's house, which is apparently in a really nice section of the city. We can see it spread out behind us. Again, we've got some 2 or maybe even 3-story architecture. There's domes on the top of these buildings. The rest have flat roofs. This is an open air balcony. There is a large crowd outside. They've got to be there because they know Jesus is inside. And Jesus comes out there and he addresses, and these Pharisees are standing behind him and they're kind of shocked because I doubt they thought Elvis was going to say, or that Jesus was going to say, hey, I got a bunch of liars standing behind me here in the room, and you can't believe the kind of stories they're telling me. I'm going to have to go back in here and listen to some more of this, but don't you believe it when you hear from them. And I think that reflects with the life of Elvis because he'd said that kind of similar themed things about other press material when he got asked about it. They'd say, what do you think of this article or that article? Well, it's not really true. That's what Elvis was getting across. That maybe I really like that magazine, but you can't put faith in that particular article or in basically any of their articles. And Deborah's saying that it's most likely both physical and mental pain that Elvis is referring to. And Gunn saying it'd make a huge difference to her if she just knew which one. And Emma's saying that she thinks it's probably both as well. Karen's agreeing it's probably both. And Gunn saying, but is your physical pain really self-chosen? Jen saying some physical pain can be chosen through trauma experienced, and the pain is in your core. Oh, she's saying except when that pain is in your core. So she's making a differentiation. There's different kinds of physical pain, different levels. Emma's saying that trauma often presents itself in other ways with physical pain. That might, I think, Emma, you're referring to spiritual trauma, that it will manifest as a physical pain, which is another way to say that we've already been told that the physical body does not reflect the spiritual form, but that the spirit can have an effect on the physical form. And so I think pain definitely could be one of those effects. And Gunn says that she agrees about the physical pain. That when it's in your core, that there's no stopping it, but there's different levels. And in this panel, Jesus is still out there on the balcony and he says, "Be not afraid of them that kill the body, and after that have no more that they can do." Jesus is very obviously referring to the crucifixion, which has not yet occurred. And he's pointing in this panel to the Roman soldiers who are going to end up crucifying him. They will kill his body. And he says, don't be afraid of these people. Once I'm dead, they can't do anything else to me. But the knowledge that I have given you, the faith, the light, it's illuminating your path, it will remain. And then still on the balcony, speaking to the people, he says, "Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 farthings, and not one of them is forgotten before God? Ye are of more value than many sparrows." He's showing that people, the secular world, can make commodities out of people's spirits. They can try. But that God has never forgotten any of these souls. He's here to gather everyone. Everyone has more value than the sparrows, but even the sparrows are not going to be forgotten. And that what seems like power in the secular world, it's nothing before God. Now, this would have spoken, I think, a lot to a very young Elvis, a child Elvis. You could see a child in the very corner, the right bottom corner of the panel. And he's trying to get his mother's attention and say, look at these sparrows that Jesus is feeding. Because he's thrown out some crumbs to some sparrows that have flown onto the steps in front of him to illustrate his point. He's saying, these are the 5 sparrows. And there's another child, and she's delighted with the reaction of her brother to the sparrows. And so as a child, Elvis would be looking at this and seeing that his family's out here in the crowd somewhere. There's some of these poor people. They've got these secular leaders that are selling them for the 2 farthings. Elvis, as a child, wouldn't have really understood all that, but he would have understood they'd been out there in that crowd and that Jesus is telling him they're not forgotten. They're just as important as the people he's up here eating this dinner with. Maybe more so. And Gunn says she just thought it was sad that Elvis kind of took the blame for his pain. And that was the heartbreaking thing. Yeah, I understand. But we've seen in this phone call that we've been listening to with Red West, he doesn't take the blame by saying, I'm sorry. He doesn't say, I'm the one who did it. But every time Red says, you're the one who did it, Elvis says, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, okay. He takes it. And he doesn't reflect it back. And he again offers another branch, olive branch, another hand of friendship, and says, you're right, you're in pain, I've caused this, let's move forward. Let's get past it and back to where we were friends. And Red just, so far in the phone call, has refused. So maybe it's a posture, like orientation. It's not whether you are to blame or not, it's that you accept the responsibility because that is the posture of humility that brings you into the orientation of alignment. And Emma agrees that it is heartbreaking. And Karen says it's heartbreaking for her as well. In this next panel, Jesus says, whosoever shall confess me before men, him shall the Son of Man also confess before the angels of God. So Jesus tells the crowd, if you tell people about Jesus, if you help them with their faith and show them there is a path, then I will vouch for you when the time for unity and reunification comes. I'll back you up because you did what I told you to do, to spread the word. He's not even saying you've got to save anybody. He just says go out there and talk about it. And then he says, but he that denieth me before men shall be denied before the angels of God. And this is again about enlightenment or alignment and misalignment. So those who are misaligned, those will be those who deny. Those who broadcast interference with the I am, those are the people that are denying before other people. They're putting out interference in a fog that they shall be denied before the angels of God. I believe this is saying that they will remain misaligned when they understand truly what they've done. When it's not being filtered through a mortal shell, then they will feel a shame far beyond what we can feel. And that will again turn them from God, and their self-inflicted punishment will be to remain away from unification for a much longer period than what others will. But eventually all will reunify. That is the promise Jesus has already made. Gunn says, and you heals your sick self sounds to me like Elvis didn't expect any help from someone else. And that's heartbreaking too. I do agree because that rings to me of solitude, which we're seeing is not the correct posture. That is not orientation. So I would like to think that Elvis is got a meaning for that is not solitude. But if that is what was resonating with him at the moment, I mean, I don't think it's an inappropriate interpretation because it certainly does sound like that on the surface level. That's what the words say. And Emma says that's sad and heartbreaking to her as well. This is the last panel of this particular story. But it is a promise that whoever tells other people about Jesus, Jesus is going to remember that. He will be loyal. And to Elvis, loyalty, that was a big thing. So we've reached the end of the hour once again. And I'm going to send everybody out of here on a song, like I try to always do. And this song is going to be He Gave Away His Heart. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining me here today. I truly appreciate you being here and the participation. Please be sure to hit that like on the way out And if you're not subscribed, if you want to be sure to catch the next episode, hit that sub button. And until I see you guys all again, you all keep on taking care of business. This is He Gave Away His Heart.
Midnight lights, rhinestone fire, Arabian suit, burning with desire. He hit the stage like thunder rolls. Vegas shook and the story unfolds. Charlie's birthday, crowd went wild. He cracked a joke, then sang with style. But just before he sang Hurt So Deep, he stopped the show and made us weep. He gave away his heart, not just a song, diamonds and gold, where the love belongs. Rings and shades from the man backstage. He healed the broken, healed the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I saw it all that night. Blackened hair, the man stepped near. Elvis smiled, the crowd could hear. Thanks to you, we raised the light. 17,000 hearts took flight. Then back behind the velvet door, he gave away a little more. Music ring, a boxcar shine, a suit that held his sacred time. He gave away his heart, not just a song, diamonds and gold, where the love belongs. Rings and shades from the man backstage. He healed the broken, he lit the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I saw it all that night. He didn't need applause to know his worth. He gave away his soul in Vegas mirth. Not just a king, but something more. A man who knew what hearts were for. Gave away his heart, not just a soul. Pieces of love where the brave belong. Ritual gifts from the man backstage. He saved the hurting, he the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I'll never be the same. I was there, I saw the rings, I saw the light. Gave away his heart, and it burned so bright.